I'm Mark Roach. This is Transcendent. This is chapter 4 of The Stranger. The morning after the rooftop gathering broke gray and misty, with low clouds pressing down on the city like a dome of pewter. The air tasted of rain like it hadn't quite decided to fall, and the usual urban symphony, horns, engines, and percussion of footsteps on concrete seemed muffled as the world itself was holding its breath. Celeste Nguyen woke in her studio apartment to find something impossible. A pattern of dewdrops on her window that formed the same spiral glyph that she'd been seeing elsewhere since the meeting with the stranger. She blinked hard, rubbed her eyes, looked again. The droplets were still there, defying the laws of physics and probability arranged with mathematical precision on the glass. She reached for her phone to photograph it, but by the time she focused the camera, the dew had begun to shift, individual drops sliding down the glass in conventional obedience to gravity. Within seconds, the spiral was gone, leaving only the ordinary chaos of water finding its way downward. But Maya had seen it, and she understood with the part of her that recognized truth beneath surface appearances, that she wasn't being invited to pay attention in ways she'd never considered necessary before. She dressed quickly, jeans, vintage band t-shirt, the leather jacket that hadn't seen her, or that had seen her through the last 3 years of street performing, and gathered her guitar in the brass box containing the iridescent feather. The morning felt charged with possibility, as if the city itself was about to reveal secrets it had been keeping. On the subway downtown, Maya noticed other passengers seemed unusually alert, their usual phone scrolling replaced by glances out windows, attention caught by small details they might ordinarily ignore. A businessman studied the subway map as if seeing it for the first time. A teenager sketched something in a notebook, her pencil moving with urgent concentration. An elderly woman sat with her hands folded, watching the tunnel lights flicker past the focused attention of someone decoding a message. Maya wondered how many of them had found brass boxes or shimmering cards, how many had felt the first stirrings of something about this deeper awakening. The stranger had said he was expecting all of them, but how many was all? How far did this invitation extend? She emerged from underground to find the morning foot traffic moving in slightly altered patterns, as if some invisible force was drawing people towards certain intersections, certain buildings, certain conversations they might not have otherwise. At the corner newsstand, she noticed the headlines seemed to form their own message when read in sequence. City residents report unusual dreams, followed by local artist creates mystery murals overnight, and scientists discover new patterns in urban bird migration. The newsstand owner, Mr. Petrov, was arranging magazines with unusual care, creating displays that seemed less random than purposeful. He caught Maya's eye and nodded toward a rack of publications about consciousness, spirituality, and urban mysticism, subjects that had never warranted their own section before, but now occupied prime real estate near the register. People are asking for different things today, he explained in his heavy accent, straightening a copy of a journal titled Signs and Portents in the Modern City. Questions I have not heard since I was a young man in the old country. Questions about meaning, about purpose, about what lies beneath the surface of things. Maya selected a local alternative weekly that featured an article about the growing number of spontaneous art installations appearing throughout the city. Works that seemed to emerge overnight, created by unknown artists whose only signature was a small spiral symbol worked into each piece. As she walked toward Meridian Café for her agreed meeting with the others, Maya began to catalog the signs she was seeing with fresh eyes. A flock of pigeons that wheeled through the air in formation that resembled the same spiral. Graffiti tags that, when viewed from the right angle, seemed to spell out words like remember and awaken and now. Even the way the leaves had fallen on the sidewalk suggested patterns too organized for mere chance. By the time she reached the cafe, Maya felt like an archaeologist uncovering evidence of some vast design that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to make itself visible. Joe was already there, but he wasn't behind the counter. Instead, he sat at a corner table with Elena, both of them hunched over what appeared to be city maps covered in colored pens and connecting strings. Their conversation was animated, punctuated by pointing fingers and occasionally exclamation of recognition. Maya, Joe called, waving her over. You have to see this. She slid into the booth beside Elena, who was vibrating with the contained excitement of a scientist who had stumbled onto a discovery that might rewrite textbooks. Elena's been tracking the symbol appearances, Joe explained, and they're not random. There's a pattern. Elena turned the map toward Maya, revealing a complex web of connections that linked dozens of locations throughout the city. Red pens marked sites where the spiral glyph had been spotted. Blue pens indicated places where people had reported unusual synchronicities or moments of unexpected awakening. Green pens showed locations of spontaneous community gatherings, impromptu concerts, pop-up art exhibitions, informal philosophical discussions in parks and coffee shops. Look at this, Elena said, tracing one of the connecting strings with her finger. The appearances follow key lines, not the mystical kind, but actual patterns of human movement and energy flow throughout the city. Bus routes, pedestrian pathways, places where people naturally congregate. It's like someone's using the city's own nervous system to send messages, Joe added. And the messages are working. People are changing up their routines, striking up conversations with strangers, paying attention to things they've been ignoring for years. Maya studied the map, recognizing several of the marked locations as places she'd felt particularly inspired to play, or where she'd felt particularly inspired to play, where her music had seemed to resonate with unusual power. How long has this been going on? Well, the earliest sightings date back almost 6 months, Elena replied, but the frequency has increased dramatically in the past week. Since the stranger arrived, the pattern has accelerated exponentially, as if this presence activated something that was already in place, Joe mused. Before Maya could respond, Leo burst through the cafe door, his usual artistic composure replaced by barely constrained excitement. He carried a large portfolio case and practically vibrated with the energy of someone who had made a significant discovery. You're not going to believe what I found, he announced. Sliding into the booth opposite them, he opened his portfolio and spread out a series of photographs, images that he'd captured throughout the city over the past 24 hours. The photos showed what appeared to be a vast, three-dimensional mandala emerging from the urban landscape itself. Individual elements, the placement of traffic cones, the arrangement of public benches, the patterns formed by flocks of birds, the location of street vendors seemed random when viewed in isolation. But when Leo had photographed them from various elevated vantage points throughout the city and assembled the images into a composite, the larger pattern became unmistakable. The entire city is being turned into a work of art, he said. His voice filled with wonder, or maybe it always was and we're just now learning how to see it. Or someone's teaching us how to see it, Maya corrected, thinking of her dewdrop spiral and the way her attention had been systemically directed towards signs and symbols throughout the morning. Tariq Hassan appeared at their table as if summoned by the conversation, carrying a notebook filled with observations that seemed to mirror their own discoveries. His comedian's training had made him naturally observant of human behavior, and he'd been tracking something that complemented Alina's data and Leo's visual documentation. People are laughing differently, he announced without a preamble, sliding into the remaining space in their booth, not at jokes, not at entertainment, but at moments of recognition. I've been watching crowds all morning, and there's this thing happening. People will suddenly smile or chuckle as if they've gotten a joke that the universe has been telling them maybe their whole lives. He flipped open his notebook to reveal pages of detailed observations, timestamps, locations, descriptions of moments when strangers had suddenly looked at each other with recognition, when solitary individuals had paused in their routines to appreciate something beautiful that they'd never noticed before. It's like the city is teaching itself to wake up, Tariq continued. And laughter, real laughter, and the kind that comes from understanding something true, that's how it's spreading. The five of them sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what they were documenting. Around them, a cafe was buzzing with its usual activity. But even that seemed different now. Conversations carried undertones of wonder. The baristas moved with more presence. Customers lingered longer over their drinks as if savoring not just the taste, but the experience itself. The question is, Elena said finally, what do we do with this information? Are we supposed to just observe it, or is there some kind of action we're meant to take? Before anyone could answer, the cafe door chimed and the stranger entered. He moved through the morning crowd with the same unhurried presence they'd observed before, but now Maya could see what she missed earlier. People unconsciously made space for him, not because he pushed or demanded it, but because his very presence seemed to create pockets of calm in the urban chaos. He approached their table with a slight smile, as if their gathering was exactly what he had expected to find. I see you've begun to notice the signs, he said, settling into a chair someone had brought over from another table. Good. Observation is the first step in learning to read the language the world is already speaking. You're orchestrating this, aren't you? Elena asked, her scientist's directness cutting through any pretense. The symbols, the synchronicities, the way people are changing, this is your doing. The stranger considered her question with the seriousness that it deserved. I'm participating, he said finally, but orchestrating suggests a level of control that no single individual can exercise over something as complex as a city full of conscious beings. What I've done is more like tuning an instrument that was already capable of making beautiful music. What kind of instrument? Leo asked, leaning forward, artistic with his curiosity. Consciousness itself, the stranger replied. Individual awareness, collective attention, the ways people connect and communicate and create meaning together. These are tools that exist in every human community, but they're often out of tune, discordant, focused on survival and competition rather than on harmony and growth. He gestured towards Elena's map with its web of connections. What you're documenting is a sound a city makes when its people begin to remember that they're part of something larger than their individual concerns. When they start paying attention, not just to their own needs and desires, but to the patterns that connect all life together. Maya touched the brass box in her pocket, feeling the weight of the iridescent feather inside. The tokens you've given us, they're part of this tuning process, aren't they? Think of them as tuning forks, the stranger confirmed. Each one carries a specific frequency, a particular quality of awareness. When you carry them with intention, you use them as reminders to pay attention in new ways. You begin to resonate with those frequencies, and and resonance, as any musician knows, is contagious. He stood preparing to leave, but paused to look at each of them in turn. Tomorrow, I want you to conduct an experiment. Each of you will choose one symbol, one sign, one synchronicity that you've observed, and you'll follow it. Not metaphorically, but literally. See where it leads. What connections emerge. Who you meet along the way. Trust that your attention is being guided for reasons that will become clear. What if we get lost, Joe asked. The stranger's smile carried depths of amusement and compassion. Getting lost is the only way to find that what you're truly looking for. After he left, the 5 friends sat quietly, each contemplating the challenge they'd been given. The morning's discoveries had opened doors to questions they hadn't known they needed to ask. And tomorrow promised answers they couldn't yet imagine. Outside the cafe windows, the city continued its daily dance of commerce and connection, but now they could see the choreography underlying the apparent chaos. Each pedestrian crossing, every conversation struck up between strangers, every moment of unexpected beauty noticed and appreciated, all of it part of a vast living artwork that they were only beginning to understand. Maya picked up her guitar case, suddenly inspired to find a street corner where she could contribute to her own notes to the city's emerging symphony. Elena folded her map carefully, already pinning the next phase of her documentation, or planning the next phase of her documentation. Leo gathered his photographs, envisioning new ways to capture and share the patterns that he was learning to see. Tariq pocketed his notebook, anticipating the jokes that would emerge when people finally got the cosmic humor of their situation. And Joe looked around the cafe with a new appreciation for his role as someone who provided daily sustenance and small moments of connection to his community. The signs and symbols were everywhere, once you knew how to look for them. Tomorrow they would begin to follow where those signs led, trusting the path would reveal itself one step at a time. The great work of awakening was accelerating, and they were no longer just observers, but active participants in the city's transformation. Whatever came next, they would meet it together, guided by the growing certainty that they were exactly where they needed to be, exactly when they needed to be here. The invitation to remember who they were was becoming an invitation to discover who they might become.